Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am just some geeky guy, and look, you already read the title, so let's just get this over and done with. Here are the top 5 worst films I have ever seen in the year 2024. Coming up first at number 5 is Argylle. This movie really disappointed me and made me walk out of the theater just so underwhelmed. It may have had cool action sequences, but the terrible writing barely does anything to back it up. The film just gets worse and worse the more I think about it, and it is littered with one absurd twist after another that takes humongous leaps in logic and shatters your suspension of disbelief. A lot of it just doesn't even make sense half the time. For example, there's a scene where it's revealed that the bad guys brainwashed Bryce Dallas Howard's character into making her think she's a writer, but that makes no sense because she was already a double agent for them to begin with. There is literally a moment where Bryce Dallas Howard manages to not kill Sam Rockwell's character by shooting him through an inch-wide passageway through his heart, miraculously not killing him even though she was shooting at him like 15 feet away. It's so sad to see how Matthew Vaughn has made such a terrible spy film when he made the 2015 Kingsman film, which was phenomenal. So what the hell happened here? Overall, Argylle was such a letdown, and it's sad seeing Vaughn take such a nosedive in his career. Coming up next at number 4 is The Strangers Chapter 1. I hope to God there's no Chapter 2. You managed to make a remake of a subpar horror film, and somehow, you made it worse. This film is riddled with dumb moments and the characters making really dumb decisions more than you would usually expect in a horror film. It's mostly boring, badly paced, and barely even scary. The entire point of a remake is to improve upon the original, not make things worse. The original Strangers film wasn't that great, but I'd rather watch that any day over this. I have seen some bad and subpar horror films this year, but this just takes the crown. And by crown, I mean a crown of thorns. Here's the thing. This film has a cast that I genuinely like in other stuff. Madeline Petch, Richard Brake, and Rachel Stenton are all wonderful actors, but they are put in a film that does not appreciate their talent. The main characters aren't even that likable and basically give you no reason to root for them. They are unbelievably stupid, and the entire conflict of the film starts because they're complete morons. Overall, I hated The Strangers Chapter 1, and it is by far the worst horror film I have seen in 2024. Coming up next at number 3, Borderlands. Now, I started playing the Borderlands games right after I saw this film, and after beating all 3 games, I can clearly see light as day how much they missed the mark. I had a better time playing the games than I did watching this. The main cast were really trying here, but the writing was so bad that not even A-listers like Cate Blanchett and Jamie Lee Curtis could make it good. The visuals are absolutely terrible, and the CGI barely looks polished half the time. The film changes so many things from the game's lore that pissed me off, and Claptrap was somehow more insufferable in this film than he was in the games. The main leads barely have any good chemistry, and the film doesn't give you many reasons to root for them anyway. By the way, did I forget to mention that the humor in this film is terrible? This film has such badly written and infantile jokes that it made me feel like I was watching a James Gunn movie. Overall, I hated this film, and don't even bother seeing it. Just play the Borderlands games instead. You can thank me later. And coming up next at number 2 is Madam Web. Look, I already went into extensive detail in my rant on this film, so if you want to know my extended thoughts, check out that review on my channel. This film is not only the second worst comic book film I've seen this year, but one of the absolute worst I have ever seen from the comic book genre. It's right up there with the 2003 Catwoman film and Josh Trank's 2015 Fantastic Four film. Oh yeah, I'm going there. The main leads are really trying, but they fall short, which is a shame because they are all very talented. The main villain, Ezekiel Sims, he is just laughably forgettable and terribly written. At least half his lines were voiced over in post-production, which you can definitely tell because the way his lips move don't even match the words coming out of his mouth. They change a lot of stuff from the comics about Madam Web, including some stuff from Spider-Man lore, which pissed me off. Like, in the comics, Madam Web was born blind, but they decided to just have her go blind from a bunch of fireworks. The action scenes are also bland as hell and are not even impressive at all. Did I mention that the writing and the dialogue are absolute trash too? Well, saying it's trash is putting it lightly. I've seen Michael Bay films with fewer holes in their plots than this film. Keep this in mind, the original plot of this film was going to have Madam Web leading the main three Spider-Women, Julia Carpenter, Maddie Franklin, and Anya Corazon, into traveling back in time, stopping Ezekiel Sims from killing Mary Parker, who is pregnant with Peter Parker, so they make sure he doesn't kill Spider-Man from their future timeline. They were even discussing putting Tom Holland's Spider-Man in there. Why didn't Sony just go with that plot instead? It just sounds so much better. I'm not saying that if they had went with that direction, it would have still turned out good. Far from it. I'm just saying it would have been in much better quality than whatever the hell we got. They could have even set this film in the same universe as either Andrew Spider-Man or Tobey Spider-Man, and maybe even bring in one of those two versions of Spider-Man into this film to help strengthen the plot. But no! That would actually require Sony to be smart. This was my number one worst film of the year for a while, until I managed to miraculously see another one that just happened to be much worse. Overall, Madam Web was a hot steaming pile of caca, and I am so glad we're not getting a sequel. Before I get into my number one pick, here are a few dishonorable mentions I just want to get out of the way first. Despicable Me 4, a horrible cash grab attempt at a series of movies that should have just stopped at 3. The Garfield Movie, yet another pointless cash grab at a beloved franchise. Imaginary. Of course the title of this film is fitting because you have to imagine it being good. Smile 2, a boring and unscary sequel to a film that was also boring and unscary. And the number one worst film that I have ever seen in 2024 is The Crow. Or as it has been alternatively named on the internet, The Crow in name only. I don't know what was going through the executive producers' minds when they thought that making a remake to a cult classic would generate a profit for them, but this is Hollywood, folks, get used to it. The original 1994 Crow film with Brandon Lee is one of my favorite comic book films of all time. It was such a beautifully made film that I cannot fathom how anyone could think they could top it by readapting it, let alone remake it. This film spits in the face of the Crow lore from the comics that it flat out disrespects James O'Barr's work. Why did they even bother adapting the Eric Draven story again when there have been over a dozen people in the Crow comics that have assumed the Crow identity? I'd also like to add that the crows in this film don't even serve a narrative purpose whatsoever. You could have made them seagulls, ravens, pigeons, chickens, penguins, or any other bird species you could think of, and it still wouldn't make a difference. The pacing of this movie was atrociously slow, and bored the ever-loving hell out of me. I have seen literal tortoises walk with faster pace than this film. Making Eric and Shelley drug addicts is a horrible change and spits in the face of O'Barr's work. They never even explain why Eric and Shelley are even in love. In the original 94 film, you completely bought it, but here, they just met for like 1 minute and all of a sudden she is the love of his life. The romantic dialogue is so bad between them that it would give George Lucas a run for his money. Did I mention that the actress who plays Shelley is horrible and can't act to save her life? Yeah, she's not good. At all. Here's the thing. I am not surprised at all that the director of this film, Rupert Sanders, couldn't make the romance of this film believable, considering that he has cheated on his wife in real life. Don't even get me started on the redesign for the Crow's costume, because my god, it looks awful. They made Eric Draven look like a goddamn mumble rapper. If you wanted him to have tattoos, okay, but those tattoos specifically are just terrible. It reminded me of Jared Leto's Joker design from Ayer's Suicide Squad. The main villains in this film are absolutely forgettable. You barely remember anything from them, or their names for that matter. In the 94 Crow film, you remember Top Dollar, you remember Tintin, you remember T-Bird. In here, what do you remember about them? And the main cast in general don't even give that great of performances here. And it's really not their fault. It's more the script's fault than anything. Like, Bill Skarsgård, Danny Houston, Laura Byrne, etc. They really do try here, but my god, the direction and writing do not help at all. The action scenes in this film are so bland and forgettable. Everybody kept hyping up the blood and gore and even the opera house scene, but honestly, it wasn't that impressive. I'm sorry. Now, keep this in mind. I was genuinely shocked that Rupert Sanders had this film turn out as horrible of a remake as this one did, because I am a member of the minority that actually liked his remake of the Ghost in the Shell anime. I understand a lot of people hated that remake, but I personally really enjoyed it, and I say this as someone who liked the original Ghost in the Shell anime. So for him to make a remake as horrible as this, it just boggles my mind. I'm sorry. In conclusion, The Crow is one of the worst comic book films I have ever seen and one of the worst remakes I have ever seen, and by far the worst film I have ever seen in 2024. Well, that does it for my list of the worst films I have seen in 2024. Stay tuned next time for my list of the best films I saw in 2024, and let me know what stinkers you thought were the worst in the comment section below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.